What's going on, people? Welcome to another episode of the Natty News Daily podcast. Dan's outnumbered today. It's 2 Canadians to 1 American. So we've skewed the data a little bit because usually I'm outnumbered on these things. But anyways, we've got a very special guest, as you guys can see, Mr. Matt Butale, natural IFBB Pro. Love saying that, man. I
Yeah,
love throwing that out there, and I'm beyond stoked, man. I think this is what, part 3 for you now?
I
Three
think so.
times?
Yeah, it's part
Yeah.
two probably as a pro, and then part three altogether. Yeah.
Yeah, we got him before he was famous. Everybody remember that. But anyways, man, the page has grown. The podcast has grown probably a bit since you've been last on. For those new viewers that maybe don't know who you are, what you're all about, give a quick little bio.
So I am Matt Butale, natural IFBB Pro. Thank you. You couldn't have said that better, Leroy. I've been in the natural bodybuilding space in Canada, the Canadian Physique Alliance, for holy, it's been since what, 2017 November. So all those years, and then I turned pro naturally 2021 November at Rudy's show, which was the Natural Mr. Canada. And this whole entire time, I've like vouched to do this naturally since I've competed. I've only ever competed in the natural route. I am aware of, especially nowadays, because I'm a pro, that the show that I'm doing isn't like, and we're going to talk about this later on, a fully natural show. But regardless, my whole relationship with bodybuilding has been let me push myself to the natural limit, and therefore it's almost selfish because people think it's, at least most people think, in my opinion, it's a righteous thing to do it naturally. I still do agree, and I do it for that, but I also feel like, I don't know if you guys feel it, but like a sense of pride knowing that everything that you've worked for is natural. So that's who I am. I also host a podcast. I also have content. We all do that stuff nowadays, everybody here. So that's just a quick intro. And hopefully, listening to this, you're going to learn a little bit more about what I will be doing and some of the hosts here today as well. Like, it's always an experience. I'm grateful to be here for the third time, guys.
Yeah, man, super pumped. What I don't know if I've ever talked to you like what you do for work.
Yeah. So online coaching mainly,
Yeah, I
since we
figured as
talked
much.
about it, I think even the first time I was on here, we talked about that mostly. And I
Yeah.
talked about, I think, a little bit of my transition, you know, into online coaching. I was originally, when I first started competing, just to wind back the clock for some of you guys that are new here, I was a security guard, right?
That's
I
right.
would
That's
work
right.
in auction lot, and then I would bounce, bouncing and stuff like that in downtown Toronto, to get some extra money on the side. And I remember like eating my meals on the clock. It was horrible. I don't recommend it, but if you want to do it, you'll be serious about it. So that's what it was for the first half of my bodybuilding amateur career. And then sometime around COVID, I got laid off because everything was shutting down. Auction lots, I mean, all the lanes were closed, so no one's going to.
Yeah.
So laid off of work there, clubs are closed, laid off of work there. Then it's like, I got to make something happen if I want to continue to train, if I want to like be able to move around, so on and so forth. And then that's when online coaching, sort of like, that's when I start to focus on it, because while I was doing the security, I did also dabble in coaching people on the side, or sending out some PDFs on the email every now and again to
For
people that
sure.
asked for help, right? And
Yeah.
then I realized like this could be a thing only once I got laid off, though, and then that's when it sort of took off. So that's what I do for work, bro.
Nice, nice.
What
I
steps
mean,
did you take when you got laid off and like okay, I need to scale this up, like I need to make some money, I need to scale this up. What did you do? What was you know your path, and what.
Yeah, so the path, I'll get a little bit into depth with that, but to answer Leroy, right now I don't have a lot of competitors. Most people are just transformation people,
yeah,
right? So I'm at like 14 of them. It's paying me really good money, more money than I've ever been paid to do anything ever in my life entirely. Also, I've got the liberty of being able to train when I want. It's
100%.
just what a bodybuilder needs, right? So to get to you, Dan, to get a little bit more in depth, like the transition was, I didn't know that it was possible until I started to, surround myself with other people that made it look possible. Like Leroy being one of them, actually. I've seen for years you've been bringing in loads of athletes to these amateur shows, and of course, you focus more on the competitive aspect. I'm not sure. I think you still do take lifestyle clients as well, right,
Yeah,
Leroy?
it's
Yeah,
definitely like starting to skew more, but you're 100% right.
right.
Like at the
So
start, I took to anybody and everybody.
Exactly, right. And so, but at least for most of us nowadays, recognize you as the guy who brings the competitors, the athletes, right? So,
Yep.
like noticing that, I was noticing that earlier on while I was a security guard when I first started bodybuilding, I knew of you before I even did my first show, right? So, and I'm looking at these things, and then I think Fuad Abiad at the time dropped like a little video. I don't know if you guys have ever watched it. It was talking about him going through a similar journey, security, bouncing, then online coaching, and then sort of how he made money. I think it's bodybuilding is you don't make money in bodybuilding. It's a video to go against that notion, right?
Yep.
And so he says these are many ways you can make money in bodybuilding, and then online coaching being one of them. So I started to think about it more and more, and it was a coincidence. I got a message from, honestly, I thought it was a scam. He's my mentor now, Brian Mark, and he does the same thing, or he did the same thing. He got his business up to like a ridiculous number, and then he learned he taught people how to learn what he learned in order to get similar results. So then I'm like, hey, I just got laid off. You know what I mean?
Help.
Let me just all eggs in the basket and see what's gonna happen, and it fucking happened, dude. And ever since, it's around March 2020. Ever since then, I've been doing this full time online.
Good for you, man. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah,
Oh.
so yeah.
That's sweet. Yeah, I think it's COVID was a horrible time for a lot of people, but for a decent chunk of people, they took the opportunity and ran with it. Like I scaled my business throughout COVID. That was when I went from like this level to this level, right? You started your business. I know Dan, you flipped a bunch of stuff through that period of time too, made a good chunk of money with that. Like there's opportunity everywhere. And I think your story is a prime example of that. And sometimes it's hard to see at the start, but where there's a will, there's a way, man. Like I'm a firm believer in that.
Totally.
Okay. Now, your competition this year, right?
This year, man. This year, 2024 has to happen.
All right. So run it back a little bit. When did you turn pro?
So that thing over there on the wall, if you guys can see it, I got that on the 27th of November 2021. So end of November 2021, I win my second bodybuilding title at that show and my first overall, which granted you the pro card for that one. So I turned pro then. The 1 year in between 2021 to 2022, I said, what would happen in my life? I think we talked about it too. What would happen in my life if I focused more on other things than bodybuilding, which is what that year mainly was, more or less work and family. That was what I can say the main dedication to 2021, 2022 is. 2022, 2023 it's again, working with no objective in sight, making improvements that I know need to like happen in order for me to properly consider like competing, not just going on stage, but like competing, especially at another tier, right?
Yeah.
Knowing what kind of show this is. I think I talked about it a little bit. We can get a little bit more into depth about it later on, about like the whole how natural is it per se. But the mindset is like, I want to bring something so good where that just doesn't matter. And I know you guys have seen that, countless times in the natural bodybuilding world, where there's just some people that naturally, when they just, you got to have the genetics and the food, the coaching, all that stuff. But when they do like really nail it, they nail it, and they look better than some people that I guess wouldn't fit the criteria of a lifetime natural.
Yeah,
that's possible. So I said, with that being possible, I've got to make 2022 to 2023 a year of just building. So that's the year of building, and then this is the year of consideration. Not even consideration, but it's pretty much a confirmation. I've done the building. I have more than enough time between now and that show to make use of it and still do a little bit more building, because regardless, no matter how I slice it, because of my weight cap at my height for classic physique, which I will be competing in, I will be growing to the show, and even then I'll be severely underweight for my height because of the increases. And even before the increases, my stage weight was nowhere near what my limit.
Yeah.
Not even it was as an amateur, but now it's like, yeah, it's gone up over the years of building, but again, I'm natural, so it's not going to grow that much. And even so, it's very, it's on the lower end of what my class would be. But again, I've seen this is just me being the competitor that I am. I always do this with any show that I compete at. I just look at the caliber of competition, go to the history, look at the champions, and I guess because I've been a coach, I know how to do it with a different perspective. So some of you guys listening to this, you might not want to do this if you're more like you get nervous, when you're competing and stuff. I look at it objectively. So I go on, what have the champions look like? Just what do they look like? Is that something I think I can look like? And then I answer myself honestly, right?
Yeah.
And so if I can't look like that, can I look like something that belongs to be compared with something of the sort? Like, can I be phenomenal? And the answer is yes. I personally believe that for myself. And so with the years of building and this being the year of, again, if I'm going to take advantage, I'm already going to. That's how I feel, because sort of like what we talked about, I don't think we were on the air when we were talking about it, but this New Year's felt kind of odd because when people make New Year's resolutions, like at the end of the year I'll do this, or some point in time of the year I'll do that, right? I sort of had that realization in September regarding competing, right? So I'm like, this is already 2024. If I'm going to compete, let me sort of get myself back into the every single habitual thing that you would do in prep. Of course, scaled down. I'm not doing 1 hour cardio a day. Right now it's 30 minutes. But the first thing I said is, if I'm going to compete and I'm going to bring my best conditioning, my best package in 2024, I'm going to start now, so that I know it's not about talking, it's happening already, right? So it's like I'm already in a mock prep in a sense. I'd be doing, to symbolize that, 7 days of cardio, 30 minutes a week, a day, so 7 days a week, 30 minutes, and it's list. It's I just break a sweat, right? But it keeps my metabolism at bay. My food is actually a little bit higher, and I'm still fucking shredded at a weight over 200. I'm like 202, 207 going to bed. If I drink more than 7 liters of water, I'm like, it's 207. But if it's like 5-6 liters of water, I'm at like 202, 204 going to bed, waking up, right? So, and I'm pretty lean right now, so I know I put on quite a bit of tissue, and the only thing that I really have to consider is taking advantage of as much lean tissue as I can put on. Again, it's not going to be that much of a difference, but it will still matter. And the only reason why I'm saying it's not going to be that much of a difference is because of the weight cap, right? So it's still going to look relatively similar in terms of like the distance I have from being at the top of my weight class. But again, looking at the competition I've seen there, I know that if I bring my A game with my shreds and my conditioning, and my muscles are full and my muscles are bigger than they were last time, and my posing's on point, which I don't fucking miss with that, then it makes sense to do it. So that's this whole process since September.
Sweet. Yeah. You're in the groove, right? Then it's just rinse and repeat.
Yeah, as we go along, everything's gonna get more difficult. Then it's gonna be 45 minutes 7 days a week. Then it's gonna be 1 hour a day 7 days a week. And the training sessions are, of course, going to change. The food is going to change as we, of course, get closer. But the good thing about it is that I started so early that all the changes that will happen, again, it's just going to be incremental, just slowly tweaking it. It already feels normal. I'm not going to feel the dread of prep. And that's not just so I have an easy prep, but it's so if I have more to spend and more to put on the line, I will do it. You know what I mean? So it's just maximize efficiency, convert as much muscle over as I possibly can, getting shredded and all that, and see how I stand.
The timeline thing is huge, man. Like, so many people shoot themselves in the foot before they even start because they don't give themselves enough time. And that's like, the longer I've done this whole coaching thing is like, when I get people, especially if they're new, I'm like, if we need like 20 weeks, I probably want 28, right? Or if we need 25 weeks, I want 30, because it's so much nicer to have more time and not need it than to need more time and not have it, right? Like, if you have 20 weeks to get in shape and you only need 14, perfect. Cruise into it. You're not stressing. But if you need 20 weeks to get in shape and you're 10 weeks out, like, that's such a battle, right? And now for you being at that new level, you know what I mean? Like, you were the big fish. Now you're kind of jumping into the deep end, and obviously you see online, but until you're there live and the show you're going to do, which we haven't even touched on yet, but it's going to attract people from all over the world. So you don't know, right? You don't know who's going to be there. So how can you make that process as effective as possible, which is exactly what you're doing? I'm going to give myself like I mean, you said September, right? Like you're pretty much a year. You're like a year out mapping this out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So November this year, last November. Yeah. Over a year, man, for sure. Go on. Sorry.
Ben Wieters.
See, I was gonna reveal it, but you knew it. So that's I
Spoiler
ruined
alert.
the schedule because
On the podcast, we're re-recording this.
So let's dive into that a little bit because that show, it's an interesting one. It's kind of got a weird place in our neck of the woods within natural bodybuilding, which I think over the next couple of years we will see things change, from things that I've seen and things that I've heard, conversations I've had with people, podcasts I've listened to, but that's not the point. So this past year, for example, there was some upheaval about people competing in that show not naturally. There was stuff shared online with some athletes, which is unfortunate, and they got called out about it, and they end up not competing because they got roasted, and rightfully so. So, Matt, I'm gonna give you the floor first with your take on the show. As someone going to compete, what is your attitude towards that? I mean, you've already touched on like you can compete against guys that are probably enhanced, trying to sneak your way in. But when you're going into that show as a 100% natural athlete, I know people are gonna see your photos and be like, "No fucking way! I'll vouch for you till the day I die." What's your kind of like headspace with that?
So that's a wonderful question. I appreciate you for asking it because that was the very first question I asked myself right after I turned pro. Because that year, 2021, that show, the Ben Wieters, has been going on whatever. It was like its second or third year that year. And I was thinking, well, when I turn pro, this is the only show that I can compete at. Otherwise, turning pro in the IFBB as a natural makes zero sense. No matter how attainable it is, it would make no sense, right? So I looked at it and I said, okay, if I'm going to this show, what am I really getting myself into? That's when I first would start to hear about, oh, this isn't truly a lifetime natural show. And I said, like, what are you talking about? And then here's the kicker, guys. And I'm not going to say any names, anonymity. Let's be nice, right? But I've received messages specifically from a bodybuilder who, he eventually, so whatever was mentioned about people going to these shows and competing and then getting booked for taking drugs, he was or is amongst these people, per se, but he reached out to me, and this is against my knowledge. I was thinking this guy was legit. I didn't really look at him. I didn't really know him. I didn't really pick apart his physique. Now looking back at it, I'm like, if I actually looked at him, and not just him, but his history, like where he's competed, like it's that blatant, and you would know, right? And the judges definitely know, right? But you got to be natural for X amount of years, and this person qualifies. So he asked me a question, and he's like, and this was before he went to go compete at one of these shows. I'm not going to confirm that, but you get the drift. And when I got the message, I realized that Ben Wieters show isn't going to have natural people at it. That's the moment I realized it, because this guy, like, openly, I'm just, honestly, we're a natural bodybuilding podcast. I'm not going to get smoked for it because whatever is true is true. And if this is too bad, you can edit it out. But between us, like, the guy was the guy who turned pro after me in my division, in my weight class. That dude, if you go back a decade, he was competing in the open. It's not like a surprise to anybody. It's not a shocker. What he did wasn't against the rules per se. So I guess fair play to him, right? However,
which therein lies a problem, but
point blank. And I remember having this idea maybe later on after I turned pro, but the day I turned pro, I was like, this is the show I'm going to do. So it was in my mind. Once I did my research along the year, so 2021 to 2022, I'm like, this is very odd. But I didn't have any confirmation. Then he messaged me around 2023, sometime in the summer or whatever. Yeah, sometime in the summer 2023, he messaged me. And then that's when I realized, all right, so this show is not going to be the show that I thought it was going to be, which means something else, which means I'm not going to have, like, whatever prep I thought I was going to have is not the prep I'm going to try to have now. I'm going to really push my limits to the maximum, to, like, it has to hurt every time. Otherwise, I won't do anything there. I don't belong there if that's not what it is, right? And so outside of that, my feelings, I can't control it. Like, let's be honest. There was a time when even at the show that I was competing at to turn pro, there were guys coming there doing things, right? And that hasn't been a secret. Even the girls, man, and they've been booked
Yeah.
too,
Yeah.
right? So when I look at it, it's like, okay, the exact same thing I experienced at that one show as a natural amateur, which was the only show I cared about. So I only did one show a year, so it's gonna be the same thing, but this is just gonna be a pro level of that. You
Yeah.
know, so the same
Yeah.
people that are gonna come in there and play the game that they want to play, they're gonna get smoked equally. And regardless, you and I both know gear doesn't make the man. If you have a history of competing in the open and then you're natural, do what you want, sure. But again, like
Yeah.
whoever's gonna win is just gonna win. I can't say like again, like nobody wants to compete against something that they feel is unfair, but at the same time, like competing itself, you're supposed to expect it, like unfairness. And I know it's very nihilistic sort of, but that's how I look at it. It's just like screw it. You know, if they want to do that, that's cool with them. Like whatever.
Yeah, there's that fine line between like being like head in the sand about it and just assuming everybody's in the same boat, not taking anything. But then there's also like the extreme, like people that are just get angry and frustrated and just throw their hands in the air, which isn't helpful either.
Yeah.
I think, you probably have like the healthy mindset of being like, look, man, like I assume people are going to be shady, is what it is. I'm going to do me. I'm going to bring my best, which is still going to be a battle for them. And as we continue to see, which is probably one of the benefits of social media, is people are getting called out for their shit. And, the shitty people start to fall to the wayside, right? And eventually it ideally gets to that point where everybody is a lifetime natural and in the same field, you know what I mean? Because if they're trying to skirt through the system, people are just going to have a heyday with them, and eventually they're just not going to do it because they're tired of getting verbally assaulted by social media,
Yeah, man. Totally
right?
agree.
Yeah.
And like that's the thing here too. So whatever it is, we'll call it like SARM's goblin cleansing or whatever it is going to happen over the next couple of years. But outside of that, like it's unfortunate because there are some guys, like think of the guys say like 20 and older or something like that, 18 plus, whatever. Let's think of the cutoff of the people that heard if they want to compete in bodybuilding that they have to be on gear, whatever age that is. Let's say that's like the 18-year-old,
Yeah.
this day and age. So this is gonna have to pass first, and then the younger generation are gonna have to come up knowing that okay, like you don't. By then, they're probably gonna be like 100 more natural shows. Who knows, right? And
Yeah.
the natural shows are only getting more popular. So when the next generation comes along, it'll be, I think, what you're talking about. So it might not be until a very long time for all
Yeah.
of us who
We'll
have
we'll be
kids.
masters by the time
Yeah,
that goes around.
yeah. So but outside of that, it's unfortunate because
Yeah.
I've had honestly, it breaks my heart because I've had clients. My whole thing is like I only deal with natural people when it comes to coaching, right? Because there's no point. I don't want to do anything like that myself. So I'm not my place to tell other people what to do when it comes to that, right? So one of my old clients, he came up to me and he was he saw me in the gym. He was just really, when people just love training and he never competed, but he loves training. He's always there at the same time. Comes up to me, he's like, man, you look amazing. There's no way you're natural, blah, blah, blah. And he would always show me loves. And he's like, he knows I'm a coach. He's like, dude, I just need help. I want to compete in my very first show. I've been on gear, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, dude, there are shows you can compete at nowadays that are natural. He's like, what? Back then I couldn't do it. Back then this, back then that. And I just really feel sad for these people, like
Yeah.
they just didn't have the opportunity, most of them. And if they did, and had they known, they wouldn't have risked such a huge risk. And it's just sad, man. And now with social media, it's kind of worse, because the age of that happening is like kids are younger, but the guy
Oh, for
he's
sure.
just, in his 30s or whatever. But it's
Yeah.
just sad, man. I think that's how I look at it. I don't pity them, but I'm like, I know that if
It's
you
tough, right?
really,
Like how old are you? Remind me.
20, I don't even know how old I am anymore. I'm just
27?
no, 25 turning 26 this April.
Okay, so yeah, you're a couple of years younger than Dan and I. But like I think of when, we were coming up and we saw guys like Kai Green, Phil Heath, Ronnie Coleman, Jay Cutler. Like we had no illusions that they weren't natural. And I think that almost gave you just like oh yeah, like they do steroids. Like I just don't do steroids, so it doesn't we're different.
Yeah.
Now there's like this blur of like people that you just don't know, right? Like you see people on social media and you know, a lot of younger individuals, all these influencers, stuff like that, that you look at them, and if you're young, they're not like outlandish, you know what I mean? Where you're like, maybe he's natural. Whereas like anybody would look at Phil Heath and be like, yeah, he's definitely on shit. But it made it like you could separate the two. It gave you like inspiration. You're like, man, Phil Heath's got sick arms. I'm gonna do Phil Heath's arm workout. But now you see like influencer ABC, sponsored athlete ABC, and you're like, damn, he's jacked.
Right.
And he's jacked and he's 22. And if I'm like a 17-year-old, I'm like, well, I want to look like that. Like that doesn't seem like it doesn't seem as far-fetched to Phil Heath.
Right. So
And then
it's
and then you find out they're on shit, and then you're almost like you just then assume, well, if I want to look like that, then I have to take stuff. Like I never wanted to look like Phil Heath because I didn't want to take steroids. I didn't want to look like that. And I was clearly under the understanding that he was on shit. But there's this weird like mist in the space of understanding, like you mentioned, like SARMs and stuff like that, where people are taking, you know, all these substances, not being as clear cut about it, but you're also not sure. So it's just this mass confusion, which then, you know, you're influenced by them and you want to look like them, and you know, 10 million followers this. Well, if I want to do that, then I need to take these things. And then, you know, 17, 18-year-old is like, well, here I am. And then 21, 22-year-old's like, man, this is like, I don't even love training that much. Like, I don't even love bodybuilding. Like, I'm going to grad school for like arts. Like, what am I doing here? You know what I mean? And it's just, it's shitty. And it kind of comes back to, like you said, like, there's this like probably generation or two that like 18 to 22, 23 that kind of needs to like sort this like weird phase that they're going to go through, where it's like you're either going to pursue this competitively and stay enhanced and pursue the enhanced side of the sport, or you're probably just going to kind of fall to the wayside and you know,
you
either
see,
come off stuff or just fall out of love with bodybuilding because it's not what you thought it was.
I totally agree, man. Like if you look at it, if you really pay attention, and I love the way you said about like Phil Heath, like there's that cutoff, like 18 to 23. That age range specifically, I think primarily looks at social media for reference and like for guidance, inspiration. Whereas the guys, and I think I would have been the last of sort of that generation,
Yeah,
but
you're definitely like the tail end of like,
tail end
I
of it.
call it like the magazine generation, you know?
Yeah. So we know all the 80s, 70s, 60s, 50s, 40s bodybuilders, even some freaking things, Bronze Age, whatever, right? Like, you know what Bronze Age means, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
this day and age, so first of all, that's bodybuilding. We know bodybuilding. What I'm referring to is bodybuilding. These guys know influencing. It's a different thing.
Yeah.
Where, and I think that's where it starts to get indistinguishable, that line, because influencing isn't necessarily the best bodybuilder like Phil Heath, Ronnie Coleman. Influencing is I have attention, and however they are like derive that. Most of these guys they don't look like, even if they do take gear and they don't look like they take gear because their physique just isn't that impressive. They may be attractive physically. There's the phenotype, you know, the hair or whatever it is, or like for the chicks, you know, whatever, they show their ass in tights, and that's the main reason why they have the
Yeah.
attention. But
Yeah.
it's like buy this product, buy that product, buy this product, and I think that with more influencing, or not with more influencing, but the development of it has made it so that 18 to 23 gap is like it's just meant for them to digest, I think personally. Whereas us, the people that they look at in the gyms and say I want to look like, I guess in the grand scheme, our base is something else. It's sort of like the guy who picks up karate because everyone at school does karate and you think it's fun and it's going to get you friends because you have karate friends, versus the guy who fucking loves Jackie Chan, you know, the
Yeah.
guy who, you know, really, maybe his dad was into it and he loves it. He loves the sport. He loves like the activity of it, not what the attention that you get from the activity, right? So more kids are like attention-based bodybuilding, or heartbreak-based bodybuilding, where it's like, oh, this girl broke my heart whenever I went to go to the gym and train for
Yeah.
6 months and do nothing after. But I'll cut them slack because some of the greatest bodybuilders of all time were built off of heartbreaks, right? So, you
Yeah.
know, if that's how they get into it, cool.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
making it all based on attention and all
based on like vanity and shit like that, not the actual grit or the freak show of what is bodybuilding, because it's just so impressive. It's like a goalpost. It's a sport, not an influencing thing, right? Or at least muscle pageant, whatever you want to call it. So I don't look at it as an influencer thing, because the moment you do, you become one of these kids.
Yeah.
And you're doing it for the wrong reasons. As soon as it's not popular, you're not doing it. So
Yeah. But you wonder how many would train if Instagram didn't exist. You know what I mean? Like, where we are, there's not much of like the gym influencer culture. You know what I mean? Like, we're not in an area where it's overly huge. But when you think of like California, Florida, like I'm sure you're familiar with like Alpha Land and those like down in Texas, like, people do videos about like, I can't walk around without tripping over tripods. Like, this is insane. Like, people are just here to record stuff. And that, like, I'd be very interested, like, somehow to get a statistic of like, you know what, social media turns off. Like, how many of you never train again? Like, I would love to know that number,
Look, you know what? I got a reflection on that. I think that number would reflect the same people that were busting their ass in COVID. It would reflect that. It would have to, because there's
Yep.
people that if you train in a gym with concrete walls and nobody's there, you don't care who can see you with the pump, you're not training for the
Yep.
looks of it, right? So
Yeah, 100%.
I guess it's all three of us here then,
Yeah, 100%. We're
I think
bodybuilding through and through.
Oh yeah.
I think before the social media era, I still would see it. The people that would just take 4 months off training just because, like, I
Wasn't
didn't
feeling
train.
it.
I didn't train for 4 months. Oh, now I'm back in the gym and doing this. It's like, do you really love the game, or do you do you want to love the game, right?
Yeah, unless you're Kevin Levrone, you shouldn't be taking 4 months off and then coming back in. But it's the lifestyle, man, and sort of tying
Yeah.
it back to that commitment I made for the prep for this year for Ben Wieters is like just doing the thing every single day. Like, of course, I'm not doing prep levels of it, but I'm doing the same habits that I would do in prep. And I figured, well, wouldn't it be easier to be a better bodybuilder if these habits were instilled and reduced instead of eliminated? So instead of eliminating it and not doing it at all until I have to do it again, just reduce it to a state where like it's effortless, so that when I have to do it again or push harder, it becomes easier to push harder, right?
Yep.
And so you just maximize efficiency that way. And also, again, it's the lifestyle. I love it. I don't something feels wrong with me if I don't go to the gym or if I don't do cardio. Like, if I don't move my body, that day feels wasted in a way, and it's a part of what I do, or probably what we all do here. Of course, the looks and the improvement, the science behind it all. But I think it basically comes down to that feeling, like naturally how you feel, maybe when the endorphins release after you do whatever activity it is, right?
Yep, totally. Yeah, man, for sure. So let's kind of wrap this up with kind of your map for the rest of the year. Like, when would you tentatively start prep? What's your weight right now to what you need to be? What's the next kind of like 10 months look like?
This is the scoop. Right now, we're at 30 minutes of cardio 7 days a week. Calories are quite low. I'm keeping them at a high of 24, on average 22. Some days we're going to 2,000. I'm keeping myself as lean as possible from now up until April. Once I hit April, and again, lean as possible is the, let's say, weight range of 200 lowest or 199 lowest to like 210 highest. That's the range between now and April. And then after April, 210 to 215, and hold a stagnant wherever I can, maybe 212, 214, 215 would be amazing. To hold that from April, May, June, July, August, and then August, September, October, November. So I'll have the 12 weeks to prep. I'm going to be growing into the show anyway. I want to see the effects of cardio throughout the entire over 10 months while I change my food, while I change my training, see how my body responds. Like, I want to see the actual build of my physique before I even get ready to really get like shredded. Because let's face it here, and like this is something I have to be honest with myself. It's like, of course, conditioning is king. However, I'm at a pro show now, so I can't do the thing where I would go all out with conditioning to the point where I could lose a little bit of size, because I'll need every bit of size going on the stage as a pro, you know? So
Right.
based on that discrepancy, I might even push prep to start a little bit earlier, you know? So anywhere between 5 to 3 months out, I could say, but with the consistency of increasing the level of cardio, again, by April, I'll be doing 45 minutes daily. And then by the time I'm cutting, it'll be 1 hour daily, 7 hours a week. And that's at the baseline. I might have to increase it and then play with food again. But again, cannot sacrifice size. Absolutely cannot sacrifice size. If it means I come with like at a stalemate with conditioning and size, then I'd rather that than lose size and be more conditioned, because that it just wouldn't, and that's not how I would like to at least debut. Once I see the pictures, I'll be more confident making another decision. We'll say that much, right? So
Sure. Yeah.
But that's it. That's the nitty gritty. That's the grind of 2024, the commitment. So I'm more than glad to share that with you guys in the Natty News Daily community. I appreciate you guys for having me here. As usual, you know what it is, man. It's all up, man.
I appreciate you, man. If people want to follow along, where they find you?
All right. So you can find me on Instagram, Matt Butale, MattButale. Or you can honestly just Google it anywhere. You'll see my Spotify, all the stuff like that. I got the podcast, the Meathead on the Mic podcast. If you want to listen to some fitness tips that I offer and some life updates, you can listen on that. But outside of that, you'll see me on Instagram mainly, pretty much, Matt Butale. All right. So I'll be updating y'all as we get closer to the show with sneak posts. I like to do that. I don't really like to talk about it until like I think it's amazing, and then I'll like show you guys.
I love it. I love it. Working in the shadows.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, people. Well, if you guys like this episode with Matt, let us know. Give us a like. Obviously, show him some support. Follow along on his journey to his IFBB Pro debut. Damn, that feels good to say.
I know.
All right, people. We appreciate the support as always. Catch you guys in the next one.